E3 this year seemed to be a missed year. Had less to show and say than previous years, and one of the main reasons was because of the strategy of previous years that they put in place. I'll explain what was good and what was bad about each conference and what their strategies were. EA was first up. This year they have done much better than the previous years. There were a few stumbles however. Like I said, do not hire people who do get stage fright.
What up, guys? If you guys didn't know, Need for Speed Payback, yeah, it's a great game. But all right.
There were also a few new surprises like A Way Out, a new IP, and finally delivering the promise for a next generation Battlefront game with a single player. They had an extended multiplayer segment, which was great, but after boasting about a single player campaign and we didn't see any of it, which was to me quite odd, maybe even troubling. We also didn't see anything from Mass Effect, which I feel the brand name has been tainted from the broken release of Andromeda. I feel like the name value has dropped off and we might not hear from Mass Effect for a few years, especially with Anthem taking over BioWare and their space genre. Overall, the show and many this year were about wish fulfillment, showing fans that they do listen to feedback. On to Bethesda, and once again, not much to say, but a solid show for a small publisher. I love the strategy of showing things that will be released within the calendar year. It made me very interested in Wolfenstein 2 and what it has to offer, as well as hopefully some new DLC for Dishonored 2 that will sell more copies, because before, when it got launched, as I've talked about it before, it had a few bugs and a few other things here and there that didn't sell the game that well. Having an extended look at these games really sells them. It's easy to show off a shooter like Call of Duty for example, but hard to show a shooter with RPG type mechanics and a little bit more deeper than you think it is. Microsoft had the most interesting show. Had the most people streaming it due to the reveal of the Xbox One X. It was good. They got it out of the way first, and I think $500 is a solid price. For people who buy consoles, this may seem high, but it's an absolute steal for what it's worth, especially when you can't get what it does for under $1,000. I think the Xbox One X is going to be the start for a trend for consoles. With the announcement of backwards compatibility with the original Xbox One games, this gives it a great marketing message to come, that anyone at any time can play the whole Xbox library in one console instead of jumping ship to generation to generation. This destroys the flip-floppers in every new generation. It gives consumers more incentive to stay on a platform. It's subtle, but nothing will be trapped on a console, and even gives the Xbox brand an identity that Sony and Nintendo have building up for years. And it feels like the Xbox brand is more for the players than Sony at this point, using the tagline to hurt them, especially when you factor paying to play all the games on the PlayStation platform. Other than that, Xbox had the best show this year. Not only did it sell what the Xbox One X can do, but it showed some great games, and once again keeping the strategy of showing games that will come out within 18 months. They have learnt their lesson from showing Crackdown 3 or Cuphead multiple times. Also in general, good to see actual gameplay footage being live. They have taken the mantle of being the premier company to buy indie games. The downside aside from those indie games, not much diversification in the game genres, and I feel that that's the Xbox brand's weak point. It needs some sort of third-person action game. This is why people were waiting for Scalebound. I don't have much to say about Ubisoft, but it was a solid show. They showed us they are willing to innovate and show new ideas and games, especially showing something like Beyond Good and Evil 2, something that was a pet project. We as an audience are seeing this a lot, not only in video games but in film and TV, the fan satisfaction factor, giving what the fans what they want. This has been hit and miss, for example something like Mirror's Edge 2, but it's good to know head of companies are listening to what their fans want and what developers want to create. The negative is that I feel that Ubisoft loves to create games that is a service and dumps it for something new. Aside for something like Rainbow Six Siege, something like For Honor should have been an ongoing push for this new IP, but instead pretty much dumped. This is how you anger a fan base, and if you want someone to really like your IP and keep on playing your games, you need to show that you're going to support it, that purchase that they had at the start is worth it. Sony had the weirdest conference of this year. They were talking on the stage twice, and the rest was just video clips. I do not like this style. I didn't feel like the company were using PR to talk to their fan base and giving it back to them and what they wanted to see. I know that they have their own PlayStation conference later on in the year, but it just felt flat. I did feel like it was an off year for everyone, but especially Sony. There was some mention of PlayStation VR, which is good because they need to push that very hard, especially to penetrate the market. There is no mention of Vita though, which at this point is dead to Sony and aren't trying to push it outside of Japan. Another strange strategy was the absence of indie developers. Sony once was the big developer helping the small studios, but I feel like Sony is leaving them behind, especially now Microsoft's picking them up. These games can make a show and make people stop and talk about it, especially when it's something like Cuphead when it has a unique art style. I'll be making a separate video about this strategy in the future. Finally, I feel like Sony's strategy of showing games too early to get people to invest in the console has completely backfired. Maybe Sony doesn't feel like they need to do it anymore since they are the market leaders for quite a while, but aside from Spider-Man, every game shown has been shown before, or not even shown at all. Something like Final Fantasy VII or Shenmue 3, where are those games? And even on top of that, none of it was played in person. It felt less engaging and more of a lecture. It was quite boring actually. These events should be fun, and Sony usually delivers, but not really this time at all. But the strangest of all, the third-party deals that Sony basically bought the big franchises for this generation were absent. No Call of Duty and just a small trailer for Destiny 2. Either there were last-minute changes, but this might signify the ending of these relationships, or next year could be even different, especially when you consider games will look better now under the Xbox One X platform, which essentially just helps the Xbox brand even more further, without even trying to buy out these developers. Lastly, Nintendo was great. I still miss the old stage shows, but either way, they do have their extra charm. It showed you why you should invest in the Nintendo Switch and what's upcoming. Like I mentioned before, businesses are listening to what the fans want, and a lot of fans wanted Metroid. We did get Metroid. We got 2 Metroid games announced. I give kudos to them because the Metroid franchise, aside from Mario and Zelda, is the next big Nintendo franchise, but it doesn't sell as well and it's more of a critical darling. At this point, Fire Emblem has taken its place. Either way, I am stoked to buy a Nintendo Switch this Christmas, and even it's a really good idea to slowly porting over the Wii U titles that most didn't even get to play, and can breathe a second life to these games. I feel at this point Nintendo is done with getting third-party games that are identical on other platforms, and would rather a spin-off of an Assassin's Creed, for example, to a Nintendo platform, which positions themselves to have an exclusive to the Nintendo platform. It works for them because most people buy 2 consoles, and the Xbox now has the best performing games and best looking. Nintendo might as well have new games altogether.